the apex body of private real estate developers in the country recently announced that it has no choice but to raise prices of homes and apartments by 10 to 15%. The reasoning given by CREDAI leaders, the cost of construction material like steel and cement has shot through the roof. Today on the Property Show, we tackle the question, will home buyers be willing to shell out more? And is there a way to shelter the impact of rising prices? Joining me, Boman Irani, Vice President, CREDAI National. We also have with us Ravindra Pai, Managing Director, Century Real Estate, and Sahil Vora, Founder, SILA Group. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. And Boman, I'm going to dive in straight away. How much have prices risen of construction material like cement and steel? And are there other costs that you're concerned about?
Yes, Manisha. First of all, cement and steel prices have raised construction costs by around 25 to 30%. And when you look at, all across the country and not particularly Mumbai in isolation, you will understand that this 25-30% is almost like 500-600 rupees, right? And if you have this 500-600 rupees increase, the rates don't go up in tandem with this. Secondly, Manisha, is not only cement, steel, it is also the petrol and diesel prices that have gone up, which makes it more and more expensive for every item that we buy. So given this situation, CREDAI has made a announcement that very soon the developers would be forced to, and this has got nothing to do with the profits increasing for the developers, but they would be forced to, just taking into consideration the cost increase that is taking place, have to increase prices.
Ravi, what about your company? I mean, I received a press note which says that your company has recorded the highest monthly residential sales ever in October, and these are for luxury projects and ready-to-move-in homes. Could you raise prices in October compared to, let's say, what you were charging in 2019 and 2020? So my question is, haven't prices already started rising?
Manisha, thank you for having me on the show. Well, you're right. I mean, our company has done extremely well in the last 1 month. And I suppose this is true for most developers across the country. The numbers, of course, for us reflects both plotted development as well as luxury apartments. So, I mean, plotted developments in Bangalore, of course, the sales have been good. But coming to luxury apartments, what we've really been seeing is that, fortunately for us, most of our projects were close to completion. People were able to see pretty much the development, which was, the apartments were close to handover. And because of this, we were seeing good demand. But having said that, I mean, we've been very, very conscious about not raising prices because the elasticity to price rise and sales is very, very high. Any increase in price will lead to an automatic decrease in sales. So we've kept the prices, especially in the apartment segment, fairly constant.
So that's my question. Sahil, we've started clocking good demand for homes and everyone is predicting a housing revival. But India is a very price sensitive market, and Ravi's just kind of confirmed that. Will a price rise, which seems inevitable, I mean, unless developers shrink their margins even further, if there is any room for it, will a price rise dampen this buying momentum that we've started seeing?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Manisha. So, yes, a sudden price rise, 10 to 15% will dampen momentum, but if it's done in a gradual manner over a few quarters, 200-300 basis points every quarter, that is something that the market may absorb, project to project, micro market to micro market, but that is something that the market may absorb without significantly dampening sales. On our projects that we're doing, and we're developing in South Mumbai in the luxury segment, our focus has been on velocity of sales. So from our individual book, we're focused on velocity of sales as opposed to taking price. At some level, I do agree with what Boman said. The cost inflation is real, so we will have to slowly and gradually start passing on price. But right now, the focus is on velocity of sales.
Velocity of sales, everyone's still concerned about that. No one wants to dampen the spirit. I'm going to actually look at how prices have moved in the last 10 years of real estate in some of the top cities. So we're going to start with the National Capital Region. Here the annualized returns have been 7.8% per annum between 2010 and 2021. Hyderabad has seen about 7% annualized returns. Bengaluru market has been lower at 5.8%. MMR at just 5% and Kolkata too at the same number. Chennai 4.5% and Pune 4%. So if you look at all of these markets, only a few have managed to give you returns which are higher than inflation, which has been about 5%. So these are the markets that we're looking at and saying there hasn't been, at least Boman, I'm looking at the price appreciation, and if I look at the charts, most of the appreciation came between 2010 and 15. So last 5-6 years has been a much flatter curve. So if velocity is the big concern, how will you raise prices and not dampen the spirit?
So it's quite easy to say that we should not raise the prices, and ideally I would agree with both my fellow speakers that we've got to focus on the momentum of sales and try and keep the velocity high. But there comes a time when you're just not being able to match the curve of the price increases. Manisha, you should also remember that the compliance on our industry has gone up manyfold. And with the coming of RERA, which is very, very good, I should not be misquoted, the compliances have gone that much higher. When that happens, there's a cost to that as well. So the 5% that you're mentioning in Mumbai is actually taking into consideration all of these things. And again, over there, Manisha, I don't think all of Mumbai has gone up by 5%. You're talking of certain markets, especially when the apartments are much smaller.
Thane has been much better than, central Mumbai, which is a luxury and premium market. But I haven't spliced it too much right now. Overall, the view is that prices haven't risen much more than inflation. And in some markets, it's actually just kept up with inflation.
Yes, that's true. And you have to remember, Manisha, like I told you, it's not only the compliances, it's also the people. We've started, getting more and more skilled people, bringing technology in. We're hoping in the long run, technology will control the prices or help us control prices. But as of right now, there's a lot of investment going over there. Developers are working on the same margins or rather slimmer margins than they did before. And I think given the increase in prices, and one more point I'd like to add out here, Maharashtra has been particularly very fortunate that the government has decreased by 50% the premiums that are payable, and that is what is keeping us at a stable price right now. Otherwise, the prices would have already risen.
So I'm looking at, some more data and saying to myself, Ravi, that look, prices are pretty much a market function. It's demand versus supply, right? So again, and what your inventory overhang is, for the first time, I'm looking at the top 14 cities data and seeing a slightly healthy number on inventory overhang or the market units which are unsold still. That's come down to about 23%. Supply between 2019 and 2021, we're going to show you, has actually been lower than the demand of units or the sales of units. Ravi, when do you think that the pricing power will come back, or you will be comfortable saying, look, market dynamics have now turned in the favor of developers and we feel confident of raising prices? Is it going to be in 2022 or when?
Manisha, I think in the last 3 years, our industry, I think, has been affected most. And this is not just the COVID. Even prior to COVID, I mean, Boman talked about the compliances, RERA, GST, demonetization. So many of these policies have really affected our industry quite severely. The other thing that we have seen is that while you can say that, sales are good, market is picking up, what really I notice is that like a market like Bangalore, the number of units has not really gone up. The market is constant. What has really happened is that the new supply is really not coming to the market, or a lot of consolidation has happened where many developers have sort of exited the market. And hence, the sales for people who are surviving seems to be doing well. Now, having said that, I think this price rise is real, and construction prices have risen anywhere from 15 to 20%. I think this issue is more serious in a market like Bangalore, where margins are much thinner. In a market like Bombay, where prices are upwards of 15,000, or 300 or 500 rupees price rise may not mean much. But in a city like Bangalore, where we are dealing with sales prices in the range of 5,000 to 8,000 rupees, this is a significant increase in prices. So we are obviously working on thin margins. Velocity is the focus at this point of time. There's also a matter of the cost of capital, right? Many of us are servicing debts which are fairly high cost. We need to ensure that this is taken care of. But given the overall macroeconomics, considering that the interest rates are low, I'm of the opinion that, even the lending rates, will start coming down. I honestly believe that in the next 3 to 4 years, it's really going to be time for real estate. Markets are going to go up, and I think good developers, good quality projects will start being able to command high prices.
So you're saying that some pricing power is likely to come back. That's how I'm summing up what you've just said. Interest rates, you spoke about it. So, Boman, this is a question I'm going to toss to you. Seems like we are, with inflation rearing its ugly head, you know, central bankers across the globe will have to sooner than later start raising rates, which means this fantastic home loan rate that we see, historic lows, are likely to change. And, you know, that is another thing which affects home buyer sentiments. Do you think that being the biggest headwind that the industry must be prepared for as we enter 2022?
Manisha, interest rates are sector-wise, being priced, right? If you look at real estate, we've been saying it for the longest period of time, with near zero delinquency, you really should be looking at this sector a lot more positively. And the very fact that our sector is driving the GDP by almost 9% is also a point where we need to consider that the interest rates, even if there is an inflationary trend, they need to be controlled on the housing loans at least, if not for developers. I would say even for developers, because with the advent of RERA, there are none of those fly-by-night developers, with all developers getting a lot more, how do I say this, employing professionals and using the best methods. There is really a change in the scenario. I think the interest rates need to kind of take into consideration all of this, and our sector needs to be kind of given a higher status and a lower interest rate.
Government, I think CREDAI keeps asking the government to step in and probably give some relief on GST and input taxes on the input goods. Do you think that's even a valid demand at this moment? The government struggling for funds, Sahil. I doubt that there's going to be any GST respite on at any end, commodities or real estate per se.
Yeah, it seems unlikely, but as Boman pointed out, an example, a case study being Maharashtra, where the government reduced premiums significantly over post-COVID and even a stamp duty reduction, that really kick-started demand. So I think if that is used as a case study for other markets across the country, that could be meaningful, not only for the government. Collections are also at an all-time high on stamp duty and other levies that they have. So it's a win-win for government and the real estate community and the buyer, who's, because of these reasons, not seeing the price increase up until now that is being talked about. So there are a few levers the government can pull in different states, as we've seen in Maharashtra.
Manisha, GST is, being charged at 5% on the real estate industry without input tax credit is absolutely against the fundamental theory in which GST was kind of coined. I think this is something the government strongly needs to look at. We need to understand the impact of GST alone on your low-cost housing. And once the government, is ready to accept that situation, I think we will see a further control in the prices at least. We pay 18% GST on all our materials, and we get no input tax credits.
Well, it is a valid demand, but let's see whether the government will comply or not. But on stamp duty, I think it's a sitting duck that state governments can look at reducing it and accelerate or keep the momentum going. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. It's an important discussion. Inflation is not an easy thing to tackle for anybody, and right now it's biting the industry, and sooner than later it's likely to bite the consumer as well.